Hello there. Today we are doing lesson 5 of A New Nation, American Independence, and our read aloud is titled The Legend of Betsy Ross. Our I can, or what I will learn for today are, I can identify and describe significant events leading to the Revolutionary War. I can identify the legend of Betsy Ross and the flag. I can explain what the word alternating means. I can sequence events in the early history of the United States, and I can color and write 2 to 3 sentences about the original flag of the United States. Our core vocabulary for today are the words alternating, which means following one after another. For an example, in the spring, I planted both beans and squash in alternating rows in the garden. Patriotism is loyalty to one's country. An example of that is many people show their patriotism to the United States by flying the American flag. Represent means to be a symbol of something or to speak or act on behalf of others. An example of that is the stars on the U.S. flag represent each of the states. And a seamstress is a woman whose job is to sew. So her mother took her ripped dress to the seamstress. And here's an example of sewing. You need needle, you need thread. We're going to watch an example of that because it's a big part of what we are going to learn about today. And we're not going to watch the whole thing, but this is just showing you what tools you need and what sewing would look like. Okay, so that was a video of someone sewing a gray cloth, and all they were doing was pulling the needle and thread through the fabric. Here's a way to hold the fabric together. So that brings us to our story today, and we're going to learn about the flag. So listen carefully to discover a legend about the flag Betsy Ross made. Betsy and John Ross were newlyweds in 1773 when they opened their seamstress shop in their busy port town of Philadelphia. You just heard that John and Betsy were newlyweds. What 2 separate words do you hear in the word newlywed? Yeah, newly and wed. What do you think that word means? It means that they were recently married. A seamstress is a person who sews with needle and thread to make or repair things made of cloth. John hung a sign outside their house at 239 Arch Street. The needle and spool of thread helped people to find their shop. At about the same time that Betsy and John were having a party to celebrate their wedding, patriots in Boston were having their own party, the Boston Tea Party. And you remember what a party that was. The patriots used the seas as a giant teapot, dumping shiploads of tea into it. After that night, the colonies decided to work together to come up with a plan for answering the British demand for taxes. The meeting of representatives from all 13 colonies, the First Continental Congress, was held in the Ross's hometown of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Midway between New England colonies and the southern colonies, Pennsylvania was an important meeting place for colonists from all over. John and Betsy found it an exciting city in which to live, especially as the patriots began to gather there. John agreed with the patriot cause and wanted to break away from Great Britain. One night, Betsy's husband, John, died suddenly. It was very sad, and not yet 3 years since Betsy and John Ross had celebrated their wedding. After John's death, Betsy decided to run the seamstress business on her own. So she was an independent woman. And what does independent mean? Great job. You remembered our word from yesterday. She took great pride in her work and had become well known throughout the colonies for her tiny, even stitches and beautiful cloth. When men gathered in Philadelphia for meetings, they often ordered clothing from Betsy for their families at home. No order was too difficult for her. As war approached, Betsy was asked to make flags for the Pennsylvania Navy. The Continental Army, led by General George Washington, flew one of her flags as well. There is a famous legend about Betsy Ross. A legend is a story that has been told through years and may or may not be true. According to this legend, Betsy sat in her shop sewing and enjoying the light of a warm summer evening in June 1776 when she heard a loud rapping at the door. John's uncle, George Ross, stood before her with two other men. One of them was General George Washington himself. "Good evening, madam," he began. "We have an important job that needs to be done very quickly. As your husband, John, was a patriot, and you are known to be the best seamstress in the colonies, we feel that you are the right person for the job." "Do come in," Betsy replied. "I will heat the kettle for tea, and you can explain to me your business." "Thank you kindly, dear Betsy," said George Ross, entering the house, "but I'm afraid we do not have time to sit down. As you may have heard, the Continental Congress is meeting here in Philadelphia for a second time. We are on our way to a meeting this very evening. Soon, quite soon, we will formally declare our independence from Britain. We must be ready with a new flag, for we will no longer want to fly the flag of the British King." Betsy stood still, listening to his words and turning to General Washington, who had taken a scrap of paper from his coat. "Mrs. Ross," General Washington said, "this is your chance to show your patriotism or love for your country, as your late husband John did. I have drawn a rough design sketch for the new flag. Please take a look and let me know what you think. We would like for you to sew the first flag of a new nation, 13 colonies united against Great Britain." Betsy took the slip of paper from General Washington's hand. On it was a square drawing of 13 stripes and 13 stars. Betsy nodded her head and then looked up in the general's face. "Why did the design have 13 stripes and 13 stars?" "Because there are 13 colonies." "Great job." "Yes," she smiled, "I accept. I will gladly make the flag. Might I offer just one suggestion, sir?" George Washington liked Betsy's suggestion of a 5-pointed star instead of the 6-pointed one like he had drawn. Then the three visitors turned and left as quickly as they had come. Betsy set to work on the flag the very next day. Taking down a red bolt or roll of cloth from the shelf, she measured and cut 7 strips of equal length and width. Then she did the same thing with a bolt of white cloth, this time cutting 6 strips. She applied her famous even stitches along the length of each strip, first a red and then a white, until 13 stripes of alternating colors joined together to form a large rectangle. Next, Betsy measured and cut a square from a bolt of blue cloth and carefully stitched it into the upper left-hand corner of the flag. Days later, when she had completely finished, 13 white stars almost twinkled in a perfect circle against the dark blue background. When Betsy showed George Washington and his fellow representatives the finished flag, they were very pleased. They knew this flag would represent the new country well. This new flag stood as an important symbol to the men who gathered under it on the 4th of July when they voted to approve their letter of independence to King George. 1 year later, in June 1777, the Continental Congress officially adopted Betsy Ross's flag, the Stars and Stripes, as the national flag of the United States of America. And Stars and Stripes is a name often used for the flag of our country. Why do you think this name is used? You're right, because the flag was made up of stars and stripes. Here's our comprehension questions for today. What type of work did Betsy Ross do? Betsy Ross was a seamstress, and she sewed cloth and repaired things made of fabric. The title of this read aloud is The Legend of Betsy Ross. What is a legend? A legend is a story that has been told and retold through the years, but may or may not be true. And what is the legend of Betsy Ross? The legend is that she made the first official flag for the United States at George Washington's request. What did the first official flag of the United States look like? There were 13 stars and 13 stripes. The stripes were red and white, and they alternated. So first one red, then one white, then one red, then one white, and it continued until there was 13. Why were there 13 stripes and 13 stars? Because there were 13 colonies. And here is our word work for today. Our special word is the word alternating. So in the read aloud you heard, she applied her famous even stitches along the length of each strip, first a red and then a white, until 13 stripes of alternating colors joined together to form a large rectangle. So say the word alternating with me. Alternating. Great job. Another example is I love to eat my mom's lasagna, which has alternating layers of cheese, noodles, and sauce. Now we're going to use the word alternating to make some choices. We have 3 examples here. If the example is alternating, then you say, those are alternating. If it is not, then you say, those are not alternating, or this is not alternating. And I have some pictures here to help us imagine exactly what our options are. So the first one says, in a row, heart, circle, heart, circle. Those are alternating. Great job. One house. That is not alternating because there's only one of it. And our last one, okay, one on top of the other, and I have them over here on this corner of our screen so that you can see them. Red dot, black dot, red dot, black dot. Those are alternating because it forms a pattern. That brings us to our last part. We are going to work on activity page 5.1 in our workbooks, and you are going to color the flag, and then you are going to write 2 to 3 sentences about the original flag of the United States on the back of the paper. And I'm going to do an example with you. So remember, there are 13 stars because of 13 colonies, and that's the same reason that there are 13 stripes, and they alternate. So the first one is going to be red, then white, then red, then white until it is all completed. And I'm only going to color in some of the stripes on mine. So you can go ahead and color in yours and do a much better job than I'm doing because I'm coloring with my finger, so I can't really see exactly what I am doing as well as what you can if you're using a colored pencil and you're taking your time. You could even use crayon or marker. Those work fine too. So remember that top stripe is red, then white, then red, then white. And it keeps going until all the stripes are colored. But again, I'm not coloring all of them. Okay, then I switch to blue to show you that the white stars are put on a blue background. Remember that blue piece of fabric that she cut and put into the top left-hand corner. Okay, don't forget to send your teacher a picture of your flag colored in and your 2 to 3 sentences about the original flag. Keep up the great work.